The Little Brown Burro, also called The Little Christmas Burro, is a very sweet 1978 animated film directed by Vic Atkinson with a story by Paul A. Friesen and Christopher Atkinson. And this is kind of a popular story that I've discovered quite recently, but it seems that there are quite a few cartoons that deal with this subject of this sad little burrow, and it's very small and it's not very strong, and nobody really wants it around because it can't really lend a hand with things, it can't lift heavy loads, and it's just another mouth to feed. And this is set in the run up to what we now know as Christmas, of course. But for the moment, I won't say any more about that, just in case you're unaware of the story and what happens to the burrow. But I will discuss, with a slight spoiler warning, in more detail what happens to the burrow. I say slight spoiler warning, I'll be explaining what happens at the end of the film. But it's a classic story that I have, as I said, I've seen before, I knew what was going to happen. And if you have seen other versions of this, I know Disney did one, I'd say this is a very good telling of this tale. The burrow character is very likable. The burrow is voiced by Bonnie Brooks, very well animated character, very lovely and easy to get on with. There are some lovely animals in this that are absolutely adorable. The quality of the animation is really pleasing. It's not my favourite style of animation, and I've seen versions of this story that I personally think are better animated, but also taking into account when it was animated, I feel like it's pretty decent, well edited. The pacing of the narrative is very good. We spend quite a bit of time getting to learn about how the burrow feels and how much of an outcast he feels and learning how other people treat him until we find out, well, what the crux of the story is. And I think it's a very nice telling of this tale. If you've never heard of the Brown Burrow before and you're not familiar with this story, I'd say it's not a bad one to start off with. I'd say it's as good as some others that I've seen. It tells the story well. So I enjoyed it. Not my favourite version. I think the Disney version might be my favourite. But maybe I'm biased because I love Disney anyway, but I just prefer the animation style of that. It's more to my taste. But it's not massively different. So I guess I'll give the spoiler now as to what the burrow's destiny is. So if you haven't seen it, a spoiler warning. The burrow ends up being the donkey that carries Mary to the stable ahead of the birth of the baby Jesus. And it's obviously a beautiful story about how this little burrow nobody wanted around, nobody wanted to buy because he didn't seem to be as useful as the rest, ended up having arguably the most important job of them all. And I think it's a beautiful story about how everybody has a purpose and everybody can contribute in their own way. And it's beautiful. It's lovely, it's heartfelt, it's wholesome, it's adorable, it's Christmassy in its own ways. I really enjoyed it. If you're a fan of the Little Brown Burrow stories in general, I think this is the one you'll really like. And if you haven't seen any of them before, it's not a bad place to start. It's one that I definitely recommend.